Hello and welcome to the 15th video in this series making a space invader game or space shooter game using HTML and JavaScript. This video then we're going to add on the star pattern onto the browser. Just to be very clear before I get going any further, this site here, well, CodePen is the site, but somebody called Johan Carlson here has made a really nice and very simple with very little code parallax side scrolling stars in CSS. This is basically what we're going to use to make our stars in the game. It's just we're going to scroll from top to bottom. It's a very concise and quick way of doing things. And it's also a nice way to learn a little bit about animations in CSS. But I wanted to give a full disclaimer that I've used the setup code for doing the stars in this. The thing we'll be adding on that's not in that CodePen, of course, is the ability to pause the stars when they're in mid-flow, mid-animation. So when we get killed, for instance, we want everything to just freeze in place. And I also want to be able to remove all of the stars and then set them all going again at a certain point as well. So we'll be adding in a little bit of logic for that. So the stars themselves are actually purely generated in CSS. The first thing I want to do, I'm going to go to defs.js and I'm just going to make a new variable inside the game manager, a list of timeouts. And this is going to, so each time we create a star, the way we create them randomly appearing on the screen is at different time intervals. So there'll be a function to create them all, which sets a load of timeouts firing off at different intervals in time to create the stars. I need the ability, however, or we need the ability in the application to cancel all of those timeouts if necessary, because if we die very quickly, for example, and we haven't created all the stars yet, we don't want to sit there and watch new stars being created and scrolling across the screen when the player has died. It looks very bad. So we're going to store timeouts, and we'll be using it for other things as well in the game manager. Any timeouts that are created we can then store in here and cancel them as needed. The stars themselves are made purely using CSS, which is really nice, and I've already put the CSS in the CSS file to have us a bit of a start, because it would be, I think, quite boring to watch me mess around trying to get the brackets right with CSS. We have a star, absolute position. For now, the top is at 0 pixels. Background color is white, and the border radius is 50%. Then we have a small star, so star small. Left 300 pixels, this will be removed in a bit, width 3 pixels, height 3 pixels and grey. And then a 4 pixel star and a 5 pixel star, again at slightly different points on the left so we can have a look at them on the screen. So what I'd like to do now then is just drop in 3 divs onto the screen. These can go in the play area, and these will be removed as well, so you don't really need to add them if you don't want to, it's more just to observe. They have the star class small. I'll flick to the browser and just refresh. And you can see at the top of the screen now, we've got our 3 stars there at the top of the screen. What I'd now like to do is update the CSS and actually add in the animation to make the stars scroll down the screen. So underneath the star big here, I'm going to add in some keyframes, from and to, and the from is transform translate y minus 30 pixels, and the to is translate y to 600 pixels. So we're going to get the effect of the star being minus 30 at the top of the screen and then going to 600 pixels off the bottom of the screen. We need to tell CSS which class or div or what element is going to use this animation. It'll be anything that's of class star. So we'll take our star Y animation, we'll do it infinitely, and it'll have a linear timing, so it's not going to be accelerating or decelerating or anything like this throughout the animation. And the last thing to do then is just specify the amount of time. So the smallest are further away, so they'll have 5 seconds, the medium can have 4 seconds, and the big can have a 3-second animation. And if I go back to the browser and refresh, we can see that our stars are now scrolling nicely down the screen, our 3 stars that we have. So going back then into index.html, I'm going to remove those 3 divs. We've got the stars scrolling, and we're ready now to code in the stars. At the bottom of index.html, I've added in a reference in JS to stars.js, which is a new file I've created. It's empty and it's here, and it's called stars.js. We're going to create our stars at random positions across the playing area. So to do that, we're going to need a function that actually generates us a random number within a certain range. So I'm going to write a new function. I'll call it getRandomInteger with parameters of from and the range And in JavaScript we use math.random to make an integer, and I'm just going to round that number down. And this will then generate us a random number, whole number between from and range. This gets us then a random integer. Then I want a function to remove all of my stars as needed. And as we've done many times before, we're just going to use the jQuery selector for anything with the class star and remove. And I want a function also to pause my stars in mid animation. And here we also use jQuery selector on all of the stars, CSS, and we can set the animation play state to paused. I need some kind of consistency with the speech marks here. So we're able to remove our stars, pause the stars, and generate ourselves a random integer in a certain range. Now we need a function to be able to add stars. So a new function called add star. I'll take in a parameter called the star class, and now start creating a new div. I'll add the star class to this div, and I'll also add the argument that we added in, which will be the small, medium or big star class description, also to the classes for our div. And now I want to set the left of this styling for this div. So style.left is equal to, and this is where I'm going to use the random. I'm going to hard code in the width of our playing area. It's not brilliant, I should probably use a constant for this, and set the pixels as well, so we'll be somewhere across the width of the screen. And last but not least, I'm going to append this div then to our play area. And that sets us up a star of a particular class, so a small, big or medium, at a random place across the width of the screen, and automatically it'll be set going and animated. So last but not least then, I need a function to create the stars, and this is the same as the function on that code pen that I showed at the start of the videos, just with a slight adjustment for the timeouts, where I'm going to have a loop of 10, multiply I each time by I times 333, so third of a second more or less, and then I'm going to add to my timeouts list in the game manager a reference to a timeout where I'll call the add star, and I'll call a small star, a medium star and a big star, each a third, and on that time delay plus a third plus 2/3. So it has the effect of going through the 10 loops of every third of a second, adding a new type of star to the screen, and we've got references to the timeout stored in the game manager list here. So that's all the functions we need to remove our stars, pause them, add them to the screen. The remaining thing is to set up the logic with them in main.js. The first thing I'm going to do then, just below the tick here, is add a new function to clear the timeouts. And what this function will do is what it actually says. It'll stop any timeouts that are running, so we won't be generating stars or anything else that we've timed to generate when the game is over or when we don't want them to be generated. So clear timeout is a function provided by JavaScript which clears then a timeout when you give it a reference to that particular timeout. And last but not least, we can reset the list. In other words, clear any planned timeouts that we have. I'll want to call clear timeouts anytime we reset the game. So at top of reset game, I'm going to clear any timeouts, which every time we come to reset game, we'll sort that out. And then in show game over, I'm going to, when the game over is shown, then add the function to pause the stars and then clear all timeouts. The last thing to do then is start creating our stars when we actually start running our countdown. One last thing I need to remember to do, of course, is to remove the stars on reset game. And now we should be ready to go in the browser. So I'll start. We can see the stars now scrolling on the screen and coming down. And the game will end very shortly because we don't have many ships actually being displayed. We'll wait for these 6 to scroll past. And now our stars have paused. We can press to reset. We'll reset. There are no more stars on the screen, and now they get recreated as we start the game again. Good, so that was fairly straightforward, I think. Just some CSS and some animations, get some nice, and thanks very much to this pen on Code Pen here by Johan Carlson, gets us a very nice scrolling stars effect, which adds a lot to the game, I think. So any questions, comments, welcome as always on YouTube below the video. Otherwise, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.